I'll call us to order. If you want to give us a roll call.
All right, committee member Wall.
Here.
Thank you. And just a reminder to turn your mic on when you're talking.
Here.
There you go. Thank you. And committee member Simon.
Here.
You, committee member Foster is not able to join us today, and committee member Alden. I also do not see. So Vice Chair Roos. Here. You and Chair Johnson.
Here.
So we still have a quorum.
Should we salute the flag?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Open time for public comment regarding non-agenda items. Anyone wishing to speak now? Do we have any people wishing to speak online? Yay, okay. Approval of meeting minutes, they were attached to our packet. Thank you very much. Any discussion on the meeting minutes? Otherwise, do I have a motion for approval? Motion for approval. Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Meeting minutes of February 15th are approved. General business, a presentation on the climate action plan, known as the CAP, implementation to date. This is so much fun to read. Woohoo.
Okay, so these first two items, A and B, are sort of a background for the climate action plan, climate action work plan, item C, that we're going to be discussing. So in this first item, I'm just going to give you a sort of brief overview of what was in your packet and highlight some of the completed and ongoing actions, and then open up for questions if there's any more specific on the details that were included in the report in your packet. So this is one of the tasks I've been working on for the past couple of months, is going through the climate action plan and seeing which items in there have been completed, which ones are in progress, which ones aren't started. So there are 95 strategies and sub-strategies in our climate action plan, the 2020 climate action plan. And those are including the sort of larger heading categories, strategies, and then a lot of them also have sub-strategies, which are a little bit more specific about what the implementation would be. So I counted all of those, and they're across the 5 sectors, those 5 sectors that contribute to our activity-based greenhouse gas emissions, and they include strategies for both community and government operations to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. So of those 95 strategies and sub-strategies, 5 of them have been fully completed, and those are strategies that either they've been completed exactly as they're written in the climate action plan, or the town's taken an action that has gone sort of above and beyond what was in the CAP. So for example, the building codes that we'll talk about. And then most of the strategies are in progress and ongoing. And there's a sort of a semantics difference between those two. The ones I categorized as in progress are more infrastructure improvements that have a clear end date, like the new town hall that we're hoping to move into next year. That's going to be zero net energy. That's a in progress action, whereas the actions that are listed as ongoing don't have a clear end date, like the outreach that the committee is working on. And then there's a number of strategies that haven't been started, and there's some that I didn't put a status either because I couldn't find one or because it's outside of the town's jurisdiction, or there's another agency or organization that has completed the action, it's not really the town that is taking responsibility for that. So these are the 5 completed strategies, and the first 2 were actually completed by the same action. So the town's all-electric new construction ordinance sort of took care of those first 2 actions in the energy section of the CAP, and it really went above and beyond what was included in the CAP. The CAP called for a different reach code that would have provided options for mixed fuel buildings. So with the town going with the all electric ordinance, went beyond that CAP strategy. Then the CAP 1-9 public lighting, that's been completed. Public Works last year completed a LED streetlight retrofit project. So all the streetlights in town are now LEDs and are using a lot less energy. Also, at the same time as the all electric ordinance, town adopted new requirements for EV charging infrastructure in new construction. So that completed that CAP action 2-5C. And with the SB 1383 going into effect last year, that required mandatory organics collection for all town residents, and the town implemented that through their own ordinance, and they're working with Mill Valley Refuse and Zero Waste Marin and the other jurisdictions that are also required to implement this to make sure that that's happening, along with the other requirements that are part of SB 1383 that we'll talk about a little bit more. So for the ongoing strategies, I'm just going to go over a few from each of the sections. And this is the energy section. Of course, a lot of the outreach that the committee has been doing has been focused on building energy use and letting people know about the incentives that exist and educating folks about changes that they might want to make. So that is addressing sort of a cross section of actions in the energy section. And then we also have Martin writing articles for the newsletter on these topics, you all working to get resources on the website on this topic. And that's something that I'll be continuing to support and supporting the community education outreach around that. On the municipal side, the government operations side for energy, as I mentioned, the new town hall, and this is a rendering of what it's going to look like, will be zero net energy, zero net carbon, so significantly reducing the town's footprint there. The corporation yard and the community center had solar and battery backup systems installed in 2021, and the new town hall is going to have those as well. And the town has purchased Deep Green, 100% renewable since 2017. That's an ongoing action that we're going to keep doing. So for the transportation side, wanted to talk about some of the bike ped improvements that our Public Works has been working on in partnership with the Bicycle Pedestrian Advisory Committee, working to implement the bike ped plan. So these are a couple of strategies that have been completed recently: the Temal Vista Boulevard Complete Streets Improvement Project and the Paradise Drive Sidewalk Widening Project. And then on the EV side, already talked about the committee's outreach has also focused on EV adoption. The reach codes that the town adopted addressed EV charging infrastructure for all new construction, not just residential. And there are new charging stations planned for the installation at the new town hall facility. So there will be 2 level 2 charger stations there with 4 ports. And on the town side, the town is moving towards town's moving towards an electric fleet. So we currently have 4 EVs in the fleet, and one of those was just added last week, and it's this new Volkswagen ID4, which is going to be used by our building inspector when he's going out and doing inspections. And then on the waste section, the big topic is SB 1383 and working to implement that. So there's the mandatory organic subscription, but then there's also requirements for procurement of organic materials that apply to local jurisdictions. So that's something we're thinking about. And in the government operations, we're moving away from single-use foodware to these nice shiny reusable silverware sets. And also we're going to be installing some new compost bins in Town Park. So look out for those this spring. And then the last two sections in the CAP are water and natural systems sequestration. On the water side, a lot of that is the focus of Marin Water or Marin Municipal Water District. So they do a lot of education outreach on that. And we have the links to that on our town website on the Climate Action Committee resource page. And our planning department works with them to make sure that any project that needs their review goes through that review so that they have efficient water efficient landscaping. And then on the sequestration side, the drought has sort of slowed down tree planting around town because Marin Water was recommending to not be doing a lot of new planting. However, the town still requires tree permits for removal of large trees, and the planning department in most cases requires that the tree be replaced as a condition of that tree permit. And then the picture is an example of a town project where some trees had to be removed, and the town replaced those trees with more appropriate species that wouldn't disturb the new path that's along the Redwood Highway. So this is just a sort of overview summary highlight of some of the actions that are complete in progress in the review of the CAP, and hopefully you'll have a chance to look through the more detailed document that goes through all the strategies in the CAP. But happy to answer any questions that you might have had in that review process or from the presentation.
Any questions?
I
You
do.
should turn on your mic though.
First off, thank you for pulling this all together. I don't think that was an easy project. And it's amazing. So thank you for that. And it's great to see all the progress, which is really exciting. I think I had a question about 2-5, and it was around infrastructure, charging infrastructure. And I think in the work plan, it's 2-5B.
Are you going to go, you did the in progress and ongoing. Are you going to go through the ones that are not started? What's that you're thinking?
No, I don't have a presentation on that, but if you have any questions on those,
Okay.
too. Amy, what was your, did you?
I think looking at my notes, and so you'll have to correct me if I'm wrong, but thinking about charging infrastructure at different town locations, whether that's like Town Park and the gazebo that would be directly connected to the town, or revisiting Town Center, the shopping center that has Nugget, how we can think about potentially helping on that front.
If you're talking about CAP 2-5 point B.
Yeah, I had 5.B, but then I had circled F and G. Oh, these two.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that's one of the items. So when we have in item C, you'll be talking about the draft climate work plan. And one of the strategies that's on there is developing a town-wide EV strategy.
Mm-hmm. So
So,
should we wait till we get to C?
I think so.
that is
Okay,
one of the items that we're proposing. So we can have more of a discussion about it.
okay.
Yeah, just to move us along. I didn't have any comments on how you put this together. It's an amazing body of work. Was there any other, because I see where you're going, and I want to make sure we have enough time for that. But were there any other comments on her work on the triage?
I just had a comment on the solar energy 1.3. At 1.3D and 1.3E. Communication about costs to the public about solar structure. That's something that we might.
Could you say again what number that is?
1.3D and 1.3E.
Energy audits.
Yeah.
Will we be hearing about these later as well?
So these are ones that they're not on the work plan. We could talk about,
Okay.
whether they're of interest. Some of the actions that are in the cap are sort of non-specific, and these were, I think, some of them that I read those and I wasn't sure what was intended with those items. So
Okay.
that's part of why they're listed as not started, because there's not really a specific action there. It's a little vague, but we can definitely talk about those more if there's a specific element of those that you're interested in.
Mhm.
So were those 1-3? Was that 1 dash? Yeah, I had written that down too. Energy audits and solar assessments.
Yeah.
So maybe we can talk about it after the
I-
work plan.
I think I would agree. I think that they are actionable, and I think there are actions that we could associate with them. But for expedience, I think it makes sense for us to follow your workflow here in the agenda today and then circle back on them. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Okay.
So no comment on the implementation to date review.
If I can just
Yeah.
do a quick comment on that,
Yeah.
just because I'm very thrilled to be able to. Sorry. Have that, have Phoebe, conduct that review and analysis and for us to now just have, we just didn't have this before, right? So great work, Phoebe. And, I was just thrilled to see, that progress being made. So.
Thank you.
As well as other reports that are to come. So
Yeah, ditto. I think that this whole preparation of this agenda and your workflow here, how are we going to get through all of this today? I don't know, but
That's right.
but it was so appreciated.
It's
Ditto,
very
thank you.
disciplined. It is. I got
You want to move on to B?
So item B is a review of what the town council has accepted as staff's work plan for 2023. And I wanted to go through and highlight the items that are related to this committee, because there's quite a few of them, and you're going to see them appear again in the draft work plan in the next item. So,
Now this has already been accepted.
correct.
So if we have an opinion, what does that mean?
So the purpose of doing this climate action work plan specifically was so that we could come back. This is going to go back to council, whatever is approved, whatever the final version of the climate action work plan is going to go back to council.
Got it.
Because I, started at the time where the council was already, a lot of that work plan was already
Right.
formed, and this process is just completed. So there's some potential for comment there, definitely. However, the items that are in this town council work plan are really going to be prioritized, because the staff has received that direction from council that these are the items that they want us to focus on this year.
And I think what Phoebe's mentioning is that one of the items that they want us to focus on and see is the climate action committee and staff work plan for work related to climate action going forward. So that's where additional sort of conversation comment can be sort of incorporated into that item. And it may not just be 2023, but it sort of progresses into future years and lines things up that way.
So this is the town council's accepted work plan. It was accepted at the March 7th council meeting, and the first part of it has sort of general statements of priorities, and you can see that climate action, adaptation, preparedness is in the first category, the first category of priorities on the council's work plan. And then in the attachment is
Can you go back? It's actually semantic, but they've lumped three things here together: climate action, adaptation and preparedness.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's all, I think this is not. So I think the first thing with this exercise that what I sort of led the council through was, and this has been done for 3 or 4 years now, started under Todd's leadership, and it's my first opportunity to do this with the council, but all of the work, I call them work program areas, I would call it, each of these bolded items here, and they are, all of it's important. I mean, everything here is highly important for what we do as a local government, the services we provide, and the things we are considering and thinking about as a town. So this actual item, I think 3 years ago, was actually, the council said we need to put disaster preparedness actually as the in category 1. There was nothing about climate action or adaptation. As we went through the climate adaptation assessment, as we started to think more about climate action, all those things sort of related in a way to starting to plan for whether it's the climate emergency that the council declared, whether it's obviously the critical adaptation measures we need to start to plan for, or just the straight, preparedness related to earthquake preparedness, and thinking about that, as we know that can happen at any time too. So it's lumped together. They're not perfectly related, but they're certainly within the same framework, I think, of thinking about protecting the town and thinking about how best to do so from the potential disasters, however you want to think about them, that are out there.
Emergency preparedness.
Yeah, I mean, you could boil it down to that, but I think we did want to highlight action and adaptation. Climate, yeah.
And that is Phoebe's title.
Yeah, and then we have Phoebe who does
That's right.
all of it.
But there's no group like this that's working on adaptation. Is that correct? Or is that just part of?
Correct. It's a staff driven. So you'll see that if we could talk about, a lot of this stuff is not a committee level staff work plan. This is a lot of staff work. So.
Okay.
Thank you.
So then within each of these categories, there's some more specific items that staff are going to be working on this year for each of the categories. And I'm mainly going to focus on the climate related one. So Adam, feel free to jump in if.
Yeah, and just to talk about this generally, the left-hand column sort of lists the departments under which it falls. Some of this work falls, general sort of description of the work or action for 2023. And then the right-hand column, as you see the arrow indicates, look, it's 2023 work plan. It's likely going to roll over into 2024. And then the bolded ones are just highlighted priorities that the council members themselves wanted to pay particular attention to, and staff to really focus on. Again, all of it is intended to be done and completed, but it also, I think, important to recognize this sort of fills the bucket of staff level work, which is above and beyond sort of the day-to-day responsibilities as well that town staff is always doing with respect to viewing permits, answering phones, customer service, those sorts of things, just keeping our house in order. So these are sort of really what way I described it last night to the planning commission was, this is really things that are advancing and making improvements upon town operations, or advancing core work and the town's mission to sort of either prepare us for the future or just improve the services we're providing.
Yeah, just to make it, I don't know if everybody read the packet as much as I did, but you're leading us through this, and then there's at the end there's 3 recommendations, 3 potential actions for this for this committee. Did I get that right?
Yes, for the next item, for item C.
Yeah.
There's some,
So you're building towards that, so. we
Yeah.
should- Thank you.
so this is the climate hazards categories where most of the climate actions are. One, of course, is considering the ordinance for reach codes for residential remodels. Another is developing climate action work plan with the Climate Action Committee, which is what we're working on this evening. And so this is one of the bolded priorities. These two have both been bolded. So some council members highlighted those as priorities. Developing the townwide EV strategy to increase charging capabilities on public property and spaces. Working on the climate outreach strategy with you. And then these are all infrastructure maintenance and improvements. Community events and involvement, customer service. The reusable foodware ordinance is something that relates to this committee, and I guess I'll give an update on it now. The town council did receive a presentation on the ordinance from county staff at the last council meeting or the council meeting a couple of council meetings ago. And they directed staff to continue exploring the ordinance, but not necessarily by the county's deadline of May 10th. So that's something that's still on staff's radar and may at some point come to this committee. And then also the SB 1383, continuing to work on those requirements, implementing those is another climate related action in the town council's work plan. So that's all I wanted to highlight for this, just both what the direction council has given on the climate actions, and then also interesting to see everything else that's going around town. I think this committee had a presentation on last year's council work plan just maybe a couple months ago. So this is the update for this year and what staff are working from. And any questions on that work plan?
So you asked, any questions from anyone else?
No.
So, in a, I think the previous meeting, maybe the meeting before that, you asked for the subcommittees to spend some time discussing as a subcommittee what we thought we could be working on with staff. And I happen to be on the policy subcommittee. So we did take, and it's the last page in your packet. And so we didn't start with the climate action plan and fill in if I leave any blanks, okay? We didn't start with the climate action plan specifically, but we did spend some time together. We spent a lot of time talking about what is policy versus ordinance and regulation, but and then we identified in this memo from committee member Leslie Alden the things that we would like to work on with staff. Now, if we wanted to add those, or is there an opportunity to work with you and staff or your staff to get some of those in at this time now? Is that what you're visioning?
Yeah, so maybe we should move to the next
Okay.
agenda item and then start
Okay.
having that conversation.
Okay. See?
Unless, Adam, you have anything else to add on that? Okay. Okay, I'll share my screen again. All right, so this is the agenda item C, the discussion of the climate action work plan for 2023-2024. And
Okay. I'm sorry.
no, it's totally fine. So the draft work plan that is here is much of it pretty much identical to what was in the council's work plan. And these items, there's 7 items here. The only 2 that aren't in the council's accepted work plan are these 2, 5, and 6. And they're chosen in addition to having council's direction, many of them have some regional support. So they're being worked on countywide, like the REACH codes and the EV strategy. They also go with some funding opportunities that are available right now. So there's, as we know, lots of rebates and incentives on these topics. And of course, the greenhouse gas reduction potential and co-benefits. We know that transportation and buildings are our 2 largest sources. So those are some of the criteria that we talked about when we first started this work plan discussion that came into the development of this work plan here. And I go into a little more detail on the staff report about the specific items and how they were chosen. So the discussion tonight that we're hoping to have is you're getting your feedback on this draft work plan, on the items that are in there, how they're described, particularly how your role is described, if that's how you see it as well, if you want to talk about any changes to that. And then whether there's any additional strategies that you would like staff to consider including in this work plan. As I've mentioned, the items that are in council's work plan are the ones that we've gotten that direction to move forward on. And those ones are, these ones are pretty big ones, and they're going to take up a lot of staff time to really get them right. However, part of the goal of going through this with you is to see if there's any additional items that you see as priorities, and maybe they don't happen this year, but they're on the list for next year, or maybe if any of these get wrapped up sooner, they're things that you can start thinking about. Another question, a discussion question, is whether there's any additional tasks that the committee wants to focus on that don't require a lot of staff time. So, for example, I think it was brought up at the last meeting, if you want to go through the climate action plan in more detail and suggest changes, that's something that you or the policy subcommittee or a different subcommittee could focus on and make those recommendations to staff and be doing that research more independently. And David, as you noted, I do have just the 3 options in the work plan staff report if you did want to take an action tonight. So the options are: recommend that the town council accept the work plan as it's presented here, recommend that town council accept it with modifications, whether those are made in the meeting or if you direct a subcommittee to work with staff to make those modifications, or this can just be an initial discussion of the work plan and we can come back at the next meeting with some changes made based on the discussion tonight. And I did get the memo from the policy subcommittee. I apologize, I got it the wrong part of the agenda. I didn't hear back from Leslie about where it should go. So there's those recommendations to consider. There's also the matrix that Amy shared, which was some prioritization work that this committee did earlier. And so those are all attachments to consider and as part of this discussion about the work plan.
I think the standpoint, does it make sense for us to kind of go through these line by line, spend a little bit of time line by line, discussing them, making sure that we understand them, and then is that the best way forward?
How did you envision it, Phoebe?
That works for me. Yeah.
And then
Adam, do you?
what was this is, does this meet what council has already approved, or have you edited from that either by subtracting or adding yet?
So it's mostly the same. I think a couple things that are different. It's a little bit more specific about what some of these items are. So for example, the REACH codes, we're looking at sort of three components to that. There's the energy efficiency and electrification requirements for single family residential renovations. That's the county's model code. Then there's the EV infrastructure requirements for modifications to multifamily or commercial parking lots. And the town only adopted the requirements for new construction, not the remodels. So be considering that. And then, as I think was mentioned at the last meeting, there's some potential changes to the existing code, like revisiting what the definition of new construction is. That would also be considered as that part of that process. And then on the EV strategy, the wording in the council's work plan is mainly focused on this first part, which is highlight, but it's creating a plan to increase charging capacity on public properties. And here there's also the addition of sort of the next forward-looking step, which is taking this report that Marin Climate and Energy Partnership has developed with additional strategies, sort of and augmenting what's already in our cap on EV strategies and selecting what are the next steps that we want to pursue to increase charging and EV infrastructure across the town. And then also 5 and 6 are not on the town council work plan. This is the opportunity to replace gas water heaters in town facilities with heat pump water heaters. And then 6 is researching automated solar permitting systems. And that's a requirement that I just became aware of recently. So it wasn't on the town council's work plan.
Should we just go through line by line, let them see if anybody has any discussion on the lines? Sense?
Okay,
I think I'll just propose that I think we all know what we need to do on priority number 1, right?
Yeah, I do. I agree. But I also think this would be a good time to talk through what our role might be. Facilitate, provide input to staff. Yes. Make recommendations to council. Yes. But I think we should get some clarity on community meetings and what that looks like. The expectation for this group.
yeah, so I don't think it's changed since what we discussed at the last meeting, which is providing outreach support when the town is having the public meetings and potentially having a sort of public hearing or having it on the agenda item at a climate action committee meeting. So facilitating in that sense, the public comment that would be received at a meeting, a climate action committee meeting where REACH codes were on the agenda.
Okay, and then what about other workshops? If there are other workshops, do you need someone from the committee there?
I think it might be helpful for the committee to come and hear public comment and hear what the discussion is at that meeting and maybe report back to the committee, but not facilitating the meeting in itself, which is maybe what it makes it sound like on the.
Got it. Thank you.
Any other discussion on line 1?
Is that on line 1 under the strategy? The first thing is energy efficiency and electrification requirements for single family residential renovations over a certain size. Does that language over a certain size need to be in there? That I don't know where that came from.
So the county's model code that they adopted has these requirements for renovations and additions that are over 750 square feet.
Mhm.
The reason I just put a certain size instead of 750 square feet is that I think that number is sort of up for discussion during this process. And that's why I put it there, just to make it clear that it wouldn't be every single renovation project that the codes would apply to, but we're not sure at this point what that number would be. Does that make sense?
I don't know why it needs to be there. If you're just discussing, that would be part of the discussion. It could be 0 square feet. If it consume more energy.
Yeah, I guess that's a possibility.
Yeah.
I don't think we would go go that low, but
Just that it's not dependent on the size necessarily.
okay.
some criteria for determining whether there should be energy
But
changes.
it's an arbitrary criteria.
That's a discussion point, yeah. So, and for this number one, and maybe for others as well, there's concern about when is this all gonna happen? Sort of,
It's coming
because
up.
we're not going to be facilitating community meetings until the staff figures out what we can get away with, or what we're gonna do. Right? So that's. We need to know more before we can figure out what our role will be. I mean. Anyway, just a point. Will be what it will be.
Yeah, so in the timing column there, I have bringing options to council by August of this year, and that's what their request has been.
You could see why you have to look at the ability when you think about adding more stuff to this. There's only so much that we're going to be able to do, even just to make that deadline is going to take a lot of work. So, and we know it's a very important issue. You know, it's a lot of people are going to be interested in it. So again, to do it well, I think we know that's a big undertaking. And it's primarily, you know, Phoebe with our building official and committee going to do outreach, setting up the meetings, workshops here, creating and draft ordinances and frameworks. So has to be a lot of work goes into that.
But it's.
Yeah, I was just saying we are discussing how to do it in a way that can get done by the council's direction.
Before we move on, I just want to reinforce Phil's point that it's really the way I've heard Phil in the past, it's about energy. It's about carbon. It's not necessarily about size. Yeah.
So if you had a 750 square foot garage that didn't have any heating or other energy requirements at all, who cares? I mean, for
That could be
example.
one way. Well, I think we're anxious to discuss it, but I think
Yeah,
we
but
should move on.
that turns into a whole different kind of discussion.
I propose we move on to just to make it through this. Yeah.
Maybe
Number two,
you should talk.
Yeah, so the second strategy on here is the EV strategy, and it sort of has those two parts of increasing charging capacity on public property and public spaces, which I'm hoping the committee would provide input on where would be the best places for those public chargers. If you have any input on what type of chargers you'd like to see, and then also evaluating the MCEP electric vehicle acceleration strategy, which has some additional suggested actions and which ones of those would be the best to pursue for the town. So there's, I think, a role for the committee there in going through that strategy and making recommendations.
now going back to your agenda here. So one of the agenda items that you had is now the time to reconfigure our subcommittees, because this could be work that a subcommittee or some of us would do and then make recommendations to staff, because apparently this is something staff can't do, but we want to do this by the end of the year. So
This is something that staff are going to be working on. Yeah,
Okay.
for sure.
This is the work plan that staff time is going to be put against. And then anything additional would be based on the questions you have to be supported mainly by us, is what I got.
Or acknowledge that it's going to be sort of on the
Yeah.
back burner for staff.
I think so. The climate action work plan for staff. So yeah, does anybody have any comment on number two?
No, that covers off on what I asked earlier, which I'm confused by. That's great. There's a lot of opportunity here.
For example, does this mean we're gonna have electric vehicle charging stations installed by the end of the year?
No.
Plan for doing it.
Right. Yeah, this is the planning phase, although we will have, actually, I shouldn't say, I don't know when the new, the ones that are going in at the new town hall will be available, but those are in progress, whereas this is more of the planning phase. And just to clarify on the staff versus the committee role, anything that's not in the committee role is staff role. So these are all actions that staff are going to have some part in.
Can I just play off Martin's comment here? So then I get that this is developed townwide, so it's developed, meaning that like we've identified the sites, we're working with the group that maybe owns it to see how we might do that. So that we have a plan in place. But if that brings us back to number one, evaluate, does that mean that we're evaluating by August or we're making a recommendation?
For the reach code,
Yeah.
what do you mean? Yeah, I mean, we'll sort of see how the process goes, but the hope would be to have a recommendation by that time to council.
Yeah, council wants a recommendation from us.
They want like a draft ordinance, I think
Yeah.
is what we're trying to do. That is recommended, has all the comments into it.
So they don't take heat.
I think,
Ultimately, the whole ends up there.
except this is your work plan, so you can word it any way you want, but I'm thinking that like, it means like make recommendations to council by August 2023. And then in the part of 2 for timing, it would be like, have a plan and, some level of buy-in by the end of the year.
For the charging station.
Yeah.
Good edits.
Just thinking ahead to see if, some of these modifications you want to actually accept and approve. To the first bullet talks about creating a plan to increase EV charging capacity. You're talking about that first developed townwide electric vehicle EV strategy, changing that sentence or?
Oh, no, the timing column.
Oh,
So
timing
by
column.
the end of the year.
I see. Yes.
Like the idea would be to have a plan and identify which sites we would move forward, I guess, like make it more clear as to what we would deliver.
I think it's okay.
Is that fair or am I missing it?
No, I think there's a nuance. I don't know. I mean, everyone, I think the number 2 seems a little bit clearer to me in that the intention is that all those things on the left-hand column, the strategy get done. Which includes creating a plan to increase EV charging. I agree with the first one, probably could be more specific about bringing the options. It's more bringing a draft
Yeah,
ordinance to council by August 2023.
for what they would be.
That's the work product, if you.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah, that's good feedback. Thank you.
Number 3.
3.
Okay, so this one we've already talked about quite a bit. I'm just sort of formalizing it here and recognizing how the outreach that you're doing supports many of the strategies in the climate action plan. And this, as I've noted, is the committee has so far been leading on events. Amy's been coordinating the farmers market tabling, and Martin's been providing content for the newsletter, and my staff role here is supporting that work and thinking about how we can do more on that front. And this is an ongoing action. I anticipate this would be on every work plan. So
Does it make sense to discuss any granularity here or any KPIs or something about, how it's ongoing. It says we're working on it, but how do we know we're successful?
So I think that's what, yeah, Amy and I have been talking about, and we met with Meredith last week or a couple weeks ago to talk more about the strategy. And I think the details are really contained in that outreach strategy that was, I think, on last month's agenda.
Okay.
And Amy has a column there to track
And that's in
the
here too.
impact.
Yeah.
It's not in
No, it was
this
in the last
packet.
one.
It was in the last packet.
Yeah.
But yes, there's some sort of metrics in there tracking how many people are being reached, how many presentations, how many community groups. So those are the sort of metrics that are included in that.
Yeah, with the broader goals toward the end of the year to see, are we moving the needle on EV budgets? Are we moving the needle if we decide it's deep green? If it's deep green adoption outside of new accounts. But yes, there's metrics that align to the broader goals for the outreach strategy.
Mhm.
That's the last column. I was thinking about staff.
I think we'd have the same
Good.
goals for,
Yeah,
Outreach.
what do you mean by that?
Did that document include like what the expectations are for progress with staff as well?
no, but I think they're the same.
Yeah, I would say that we've been sort of working in partnership on that.
Well, I think about, maybe, correct me if I'm going off base here, but it seems like, develop and implement climate outreach strategy, including online and in-person outreach to support CAP strategies such as, in the building permit process and when public come and interact with, people, there's lots of opportunities for there to be, outreach at that time. And it's not something that we do, it's something that staff does. Is that just implied here? Is that something that staff's doing? Is it not being done?
I think that, so this gets to the policy subcommittee's recommendations.
Yeah.
Which I think we should absolutely do that, whether it sits under number 3 or something else, I don't know. That's a good question.
Yeah, I would consider that as distinct because it's more focused on that topic.
Okay.
So I would not consider that as included in this item
This is
3.
more general.
Right, this is more
Okay.
general community outreach.
You can think of this as, like somebody coming in is like a captive, right? Like how you engage with somebody that comes into the town. Whereas we're going out and grabbing people.
Okay. Yeah, that's I think that's what you're talking about is the last column. And I want to make sure the town is doing what they can to educate and, create awareness at the touch points that staff has.
Totally,
Yeah.
I agree.
For example, with building permits and that
Yeah.
sort of.
Yeah.
things, which committee isn't gonna do that. Has to be at the building department has to do that. If they're gonna do it.
So there's something more refined you want to address that later. Or you're suggesting that.
So I wouldn't add that to this strategy,
okay.
but we can talk about whether that is something you want to start adding.
Number 4?
So number 4 is just continuing to implement the requirements of SB 1383. And we haven't really talked about a role that the committee would play in this. It's been more on the staff side, staff doing outreach to businesses that need to comply with food donation regulations and teaching businesses how to sort waste properly. And as I mentioned earlier, the compost bins that are going in. So I just put in this column, the committee is welcome to provide comment if the council requests it, or if you would like to provide comment. But my sense from this committee is that you are more focused on the areas of transportation and energy. So I had left it at that, but open to having a discussion about that if you're interested in getting more involved in the zero waste aspect.
Any comment?
It's a law, right? So
Yes.
it's really not a question of us encouraging people to do it. Like jaywalking or something.
Yeah. Jaywalking's okay now.
And it is. Right.
Thank you, Robert.
I think you got it. Yeah.
All right, so then 5 is municipal energy efficiency projects. That was as described in the staff report. There's an opportunity to replace some gas water heaters with heat pump water heaters, potentially at no cost to the town, depending on funding availability. It's first come, first serve. And this is also dependent on staff availability because it requires some public works staff time to implement these projects, and they've got a lot on their plate right now. So if the committee wants to direct or wants to keep this item on the work plan, that's basically maxes out public works capacity for any other climate related projects this year. So just a heads up on that.
This is the grant application.
It's not a grant. I'm not sure
Funding
what
is
it would be
available,
described as.
yeah.
Funding's available on a first come, first served basis for this program, this countywide program. And there's the potential that the funding is going to be renewed for next year as it was for this year. But we don't have a guarantee on that.
So I remember from my discussion with you, for example, the town center has 2 hot water heaters that are gas. 1 or 2. It has 1 or 2, and the idea is that we could, if we had staff's time, the thinking is we could seek this funding to replace the gas hot water heaters with heat pumps.
Yeah, so essentially the staff time is not really in seeking the funding, it's in sort of monitoring the project. This would have to go to council, there'd be a staff report, the company that does this would need to come back and do a site assessment and make sure that all of the sites are still appropriate for the program. So it just requires staff time to monitor the project and be there while the heat pumps are being installed. So that's the staff time requirement there.
And it's for town facilities. It's not,
Right.
it's
Right.
not town
It is,
center.
it is
It's-
just for town facilities.
Yeah, so.
I thought the town center was a town facility, but it's,
No, it's a shopping center.
I'm
The
sorry.
community center.
What's the name of the rec center?
The rec center, yeah.
Yeah, but the rec, so that the rec center has 1 or 2 hot water heaters, and they
So
thank you
this
for
is, the assessment identified the community center, the
community center.
water heaters in the community center.
And the fire station.
Yes, and the fire station.
What else will we be using, the public works? What else? I don't mean that what else do they have going on? But you said if you wanted their time to be redirected, what else would we redirect? their time?
Right, I don't know.
Okay.
I mean,
That's just-
isn't this a pretty simple thing? I mean, just hire a electrical contractor, come out and look. I mean, they have a cost estimate.
Yeah,
I must
they
have gotten that somewhere.
They do. So this contractor, Wilden, does the whole project, does the assessment, does the install. And so the county or it's a partnership between the county and PG&E that runs this program, and they've identified this contractor.
And they came up with costs and how does that require? I mean, does somebody just have to unlock the door and let them in?
No, I mean, this expenditure of town, any expenditure of town funds typically is going to go through a budgeting process on capital improvements or what have you. So there's that aspect of it, which I think is what you're referring in conversation with RJ.
Well,
Or-
there's no cost.
Okay, so it's just the oversight of making sure that it's,
Right.
Yeah.
To me, it seems like low, it
it's.
seems like low hanging fruit for us to
Yeah, exactly.
do. Unless I'm missing something.
Was there any other, was this just from a discussion? of
just-
Public Works or?
Yeah, it's
Okay.
just that they would like some direction and support from the committee in going forward with this project. The request
That it's a
there.
priority, yeah.
Yeah, that it's a priority.
There's a lot of, I mean, it's just context. There's a lot of needs in different areas of all the facilities. And so it's like you focus, even if it's a couple days on focusing on that versus some other maintenance project or replacement project. It just, you know, their list is more like
A
book.
category
It's-
2 or 3 project
it's
or
a book.
category 1
Yeah.
project.
It's like a book of things. It's not, it's like,
They have an endless list.
yes,
So
especially
my-
when the trees are coming down all around.
Right, so I think that this feels like low hanging fruit, a no brainer, but also we don't have scope of everything they're working on, so we can't say move this on versus something else.
Mhm.
But based on what this says
Yeah.
here and what you just showed us, I would vote for it and we'll see if they have the time to do it. That would be.
But that, you see, there's none is the. what our
Right, I mean,
pro-
that's why I'm saying,
And that's
Unless
easy
we
for
could
us.
do that, what could we do?
so I'm
to
saying,
help?
sure, go for it.
So I think that's why you put it on here, right? It's a good.
This is your role is accepting, recommending that council accept the work plan with this item on it.
Got it.
Great.
Any other discussion on that?
Well, what would we just like to know how burdensome this would be? Or do we not care, or we'll just let it happen when it happens? Because there's a funding component to this thing that we could, watch disappear.
Yeah.
Right, so that's not good.
How long do you have for the funds?
We don't
The-
know.
Maybe the next.
What I've heard from county staff is that they're likely to be used up by June,
Oh, right, so we gotta move on it.
but they may be renewed for next year. That's,
Right.
this assessment was done last year and the funds ran out and now the funds were renewed for this year. So,
And that's a county
hopefully-
decision. Whether to renew it.
well, so the funds come from PG&E and from the CPUC, from the state. So it's the same, my understanding is it's the same money that funds the Marin Climate Energy Partnership. So that's been getting renewed and hopefully these funds will get renewed as well.
Part of this for me is the town walking the walk. Rather than just talking. And here we have an opportunity to get funding to get off of fossil fuel and go on to electric energy. And to not have to apologize that we have gas facilities in the town. So, and it's
The optics are.
kind of a lead by example, so I'm kind of bullish on this, that we find a way to do it and hope that it doesn't take a lot of resources from staff. I see high value myself.
Yeah, I think that's the
We make
direction.
that like something this committee would like recommend and move and vote on it. I mean, is that?
I think it's all on here, right?
Right.
That's why it's on here in the first place, because I think
Yeah.
there's agreement here. It's not like we're trying to do.
I
push.
think we're all agreeing,
Yeah.
like number 5.
Okay. Okay.
violently, yes.
Yes, so then number 6 is beginning to research the requirements of this law SB 379, which is going to require some automated solar permitting systems, which I think, Martin, did you send me that?
I did.
Yes, so
You told me they're busy.
yes, and then I learned that it's a requirement, so on our list. And it's not a requirement until 2024. So this is why it's a little bit lower down on the list. It's just starting to explore how we can comply with that. And then the last one is the reusable food bar ordinance that we've talked about a little bit, and it may or may not come to this committee. It's being evaluated by town staff. Just put it on there as a sort of a FYI, and we're not sure where that's going to go yet.
Yeah, I would just say the next steps are probably going back to council with some options for giving us direction on where to go with this, and how much time and energy they want us to spend on it. And we're doing more research right now with a lot of the business community as well, and just getting to understand how at least the county's ordinance would how it would be enforced essentially with the various different businesses around town.
And then I put down at the bottom here some of the ongoing work that I'm doing. So participating in regional bodies like MCEP, staffing the Climate Action Committee and preparing the agendas, packets and minutes, tracking funding, looking at grants that are available and rebates, monitoring those state and federal requirements, and advising the town on sort of internal sustainability best practices. So these are sort of ongoing actions in addition to the main work plan items.
That was to your walk the walk. We have to evaluate our own operations.
Okay. Cool.
So this would be a time if you have any suggestions or any other priorities that you want to bring up, either for staff's consideration or that the committee wants to focus on.
So when the policy committee wrote this memo, are we getting to this point now? Okay, when the policy committee wrote this memo and suggested a few recommendations, did you all get this in your packet? Yeah.
Yeah. I didn't memorize it though.
It's the last page. You've done such a you have a systematic approach to going to the cap and defining things. We were a little bit out of the box. It all kind of relates, but Adam, when you review these, are these things that you think are things, and maybe we could review them individually, but are these things that you think would just be not doable this year by staff?
You might be able to go through them a little bit. I'm actually looking at it for the first time right now. So are we following recommendations? So we're talking about the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right, on this page?
Correct. Yeah, these are things that the policy subcommittee
Okay.
would like to discuss. And I guess we're discussing this. This is the policy subcommittee also presenting this to the committee.
Mhm.
So these, as a subcommittee, these are some of the things that we thought would be useful if to work towards greenhouse gas reductions in the town of Corte Madera. And so we could go through them line by line if you want, Adam.
Yeah, that'd be great. Why don't we do that? I think maybe everyone would benefit, including those maybe on the might be listening or listen later.
Yeah. So an amendment to the building permit fee schedule that would waive permit fees for electrification projects within a defined time period, meaning that this could be an incentive, meaning that if you apply, how can we get people to apply earlier rather than waiting? So the idea here is that we don't want to waive fees forever, but the idea was, could we waive fees between now and 2025? Because we want people to implement faster. Or reduce fees. An electrification project that replaces a fossil gas system or appliance by 2025, for example, would be eligible after a date certain. Electrification projects that replace gas systems would be eligible for reduced permit fees or waived for income qualified applicants. I think there's two things here. Is can we incentivize people to switch over to electric appliances faster by the town waiving fees for a certain time period? And then the second one is waive fees for income qualified, which I think already gets done now, right? In some ways.
No, not necessarily. So the good thing about this is on the work plan, we do have adopt a new fee ordinance, or I forget what we call it, fee schedule. Yeah, we call it a fee schedule as one of the work plan items that council has already accepted. So that certainly could be part of that discussion.
Okay.
So I think whether or not it's actually this specific, but I think the committee's comments in that process and how it could further the goals of the climate action plan or the goals of this committee certainly can be integrated into that process of as we go and get feedback and comments and how to maybe structure this. And then ultimately, I think that would be, in my view, probably something the council would ultimately need to weigh in on and decide. But yeah, I think since we're doing that process, it's a good time to actually bring this up and think about that, how to manipulate fees to actually encourage certain results. And certainly the equity part of this is already something that was discussed as part of with the council in the work plan discussion.
Martin and Amy, did you have any comments on that idea?
I think in conjunction with what the Air Board has just done, we could boost this, we could say, you know, get a jump on it.
Yeah.
Because you're gonna run out 27 or 29, right? So this
Yeah, yeah.
helps, you know, people do it quicker.
Yeah.
If you wait until 27 or 29, fees are going up.
Yeah, in our discussions with, you're reminding me of something. In our discussions is that here's an opportunity for town to encourage people to act earlier because the cost of gas is going to go up. It's a stranded asset. You know, can we encourage people to act earlier so they aren't subject to higher fees for a longer period of time or higher costs for a longer period of time? So it's like a lot of win-win-win here.
Well, yeah, and I think that, you know, this, I guess the max permitting fees, I mean, there's eliminating them, whether you set it at a certain rate or some sort of subsidized rate is another question. But I think, I mean, the model is right. The solar fees are sort of capped at a certain rate as well. But that was state. And so this could be a local way of actually sort of moving the dial on certain things. Yeah, I mean, it certainly, I understand it.
Okay, number 2, replace on burnout a requirement that gas furnaces and gas and water heaters be replaced on burnout with electric models. The idea here is that is there some way that we can encourage, require the replacement of gas appliances with electric appliances upon burnout?
Burnout mean it just stopped working
You need to replace it.
or
Yeah, you need to replace it.
for whatever reason.
Yeah.
So the county recently did a study on this and still waiting to actually see the study, but they were reported on it at the last MCEP meeting, and they had some concerns about the equity impacts of a policy like that. And just all the possible complications that could come up with switching to an electric on a burnout situation, which might be an emergency situation, where potentially the room isn't sized well, or there isn't electrical panel capacity, or, you know, all the different possibilities that might come up, and that would pose a specific burden to lower income folks. So I'm not sure that that's something that the town would be considering right now. However, another thing that's going on countywide on building electrification is there's going to be a countywide electrification plan developed this year, and I'm going to be participating on the steering committee for that. And so it's going to be looking at sort of next steps past the REACH codes, which we're already considering, counties already adopted. What are the next steps to electrify? So I think that's an action. That process is going to provide some next steps for the town on this action, and potentially provide some more guidance on how we could get to a situation where we are replacing with electric, but providing hopefully some solutions to make it less burdensome for folks.
I think we've kind of painted this opportunity with a really broad brush. So there's municipal, and then there's commercial, and there's residential. And we can almost talk about this 3 in different ways. Does this town already have a policy to replace on burnout with electric appliances?
For town facilities?
Yeah.
I don't believe we have a written policy of that kind. Adam, do you know of any policies related to town facilities installing
No.
gas?
No, we don't at this point.
Well, maybe we should take each three of those kind of on their own. So,
Well, if we just quickly, just because I'm watching time too.
Yeah.
It's
Amy,
on
your
on
mic.
the community, like. If we're gonna have a new facility that's probably got all this in it already. And we replace the water heaters in the community center and the firehouse, we're pretty much done. Right?
if we do that.
If we do it. So I guess I would say that there's commercial and residential, which we can go through. Can I add one thing, which is hear what you're saying about the complications around this, and I think those are real. Is there any possibility of grant money or some type of funding that we could win, that we could use as an incentive for burnout? Like, is there something in the new IRA package where we could get those dollars and say, if your appliance burns out, we'll take care of however much money of it?
Yeah, I don't know of any specific funding off of the top of my head, but I could definitely see that it might be out there.
It does seem like one as well, that if the county's already doing some research on this and like thinking through it, that we sort of try to
benefit from it.
or latch onto the work that they're doing and sort of bring those comments that you have sort of into that process.
So our process here, so are we, as a committee, are we saying, can we add this to your work plan?
Yeah, and I think it's sort of at the bottom of the work plan. That work is, where Phoebe listed out sort of the additional work. There's town operations and advising town management on that. And then there's also the one about regional, the collaboration and sort of sitting on these committees and whatnot too.
But could we add it for 2020? Because I think some of it, right, is looking into 2024.
Yeah, I think it could be added as a sort of consider or
So
research opportunities for that kind of policy. I would want to wait to see what comes out of this countywide electrification plan process.
I think I'm in agreement. I'm just saying, put it on the work plan in such a way that
It doesn't
it does
fall
exactly
off.
what you just said.
It doesn't disappear.
Yeah. Can we,
That's-
and even if it went into 2024, just, these are things that we want to work on.
Got it. Yeah. I think that's
Okay, I think when we come to a vote, if we do vote tonight, I don't think we're accepting the work plan as is. I think we're editing the work plan.
I didn't, yes.
Okay,
was expected.
Electric panel upgrades. Property owners need a clear path. The assumption is that adding a new electrical appliance triggers the need to upgrade expensive electric panels is wrong. A definitive answer to what is required need to be researched and codified. I think there's a lot of discussion in the community. Maybe you're aware of this as well, that the interpretation of building officials and permit people reviewing permits is that panel upgrading is required, when in fact that isn't the answer all the time. So what the action, the work here is to ask, I'm proposing here to amend the work plan to include
What triggers an upgrade?
researching how panel upgrades can be avoided for residences as a strategy, rather than, and this is something that's ongoing in the community. Because if people add up all these electrical appliances and we don't include diversity in the right way, it ends up being a 200-watt panel. And there's lots of ways to avoid that cost.
I just went through a very personal story on that in the last week or two. Yeah.
And anecdotally, it comes up when we're at the farmer's market
Oh, yeah.
tabling. When we talk about it, it's like, well, I might have to update my electrical panel and.
And they're even worse horror stories about having to upgrade something that's on a pole out in the,
Yeah,
and it's $30,000 for you to get that heat pump.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think part of it is trying to figure out how to come to it's, the great planning answer or building official answer or lawyer answer is like, it depends on what you're talking about.
Yeah.
And so how do you get clarification on every single sort of instance? It perhaps there's like the typical, you could do model sort of like a very basic assumption, you're doing X, Y, and Z, and maybe that can be you can sort of try to get some answers that way, but literally, most every situation is a little bit different. And that's the challenge with getting one answer out there on this. We could research and give some, make sure that have some clarity as, in terms of how it's being interpreted, but a lot of it, my situation was solar in our panel. If we wanted to even go to 120 or something like that, which I think you can do on the same panel, PG&E wouldn't do it because it was within 3 feet of our gas meter. And now they have a new policy that says we won't let you do that, electrify that panel. So they wanted us to move it down. And I was like, forget that.
I think the example here is for hot tubs. If the hot tub is assumed to be concurrent in use with the other gas appliances, the other electrical appliances, and it would trigger it could trigger a panel upgrade. But in fact, that doesn't have to be the case. There's other ways to manage your load. Now there's systems that manage your load for you.
Yeah.
So I think the request here is to bring this as an action to help track this so that we can avoid the residents and businesses being
I think a lot of it's, go ahead.
Huh?
Go ahead. Yeah.
well, can we avoid this?
Yeah,
Yeah.
the National Electric Code gives you credit for things because they assume you won't be running everything at will.
Right.
But as well, you can run something, and if you have something that's optional, it won't allow you to run it.
Right.
It'll trigger a switch.
It's a switch, yeah.
I imagine it's a lot of it's dictated. I'm just guessing, but this is contractors probably explaining this to the residents, not the building department.
Oh, that's right.
Okay.
Yeah, this is something that's actually been coming up in the building department, and the building inspector and I attended a presentation the other day on how to avoid upgrading the panel. But yes, I do think in a lot of cases it's the contractor who's making the recommendations to the homeowner who maybe doesn't know much about their panel capacity and isn't able to sort of push back on that recommendation and maybe avoid upsizing the panel. But I do think there's a role in some cases for how we're doing our load calculations, how applicants are asked to do their load calculations and whether those trigger a panel upgrade or not. So I think that's an important topic to do some more research into. I'm not sure exactly what it would look like at this point.
So we're the section, I think we're agreeing to add it on the bottom as a proposal here until we get to the.
Yeah, it's sort of like research or look into or whatever, right? I mean, that's, yeah.
I think too, for outreach, we could put something around myth busting on this. So once we formulate what that looks like, we can have some talking points.
Yeah.
Because I think it's a good topic to educate on.
Yeah, one topic that came up specifically is HOAs and the panel upgrades there. So that's something we should connect on when you're working on that presentation, HOAs.
Should we move on? We're gonna run out of time, so I want to. Yeah, item number 4 was, can the building permit counter be kind of have a point of sale approach to information and FAQs? I don't know if you already do this or not.
Yes and no. It's not, there's not like a board. I mean, we used to have a board, but yes, I think absolutely. I don't see any issues with this. It's just a matter of figuring out how to.
Keep, pointing people to the CAC web page or other resources.
We had one idea with the new facility that there would be almost like a screen, like from above that could change over time and highlight certain aspects of things going on in town. It could be like you're in there to do a building permit, but there's a public hearing going on this, and then it switches to more information about X, so yeah, I agree. That's a place to capture an audience and inform people.
List of
Can I just say one
Yeah.
thing? Can we maybe add to next meeting's agenda, talking a little bit more about this? Because I think I'm wondering if there are other opportunities to connect with residents, maybe even before they're thinking about a remodel or a permit or what it is, so we can get them as they're planning and protecting.
Okay, so the item is discussion of how
Um,
to,
Outreach to contractors, architects, like where we can.
And property owners.
Where we can connect with them through the town or elsewhere
Okay.
ahead of permitting.
got it.
Yeah, because I've heard that, by the time they get to for the building permit, all those decisions have been made. And it's too disruptive at that point. Qualified contractors? Next.
Were you talking about number 5?
No, for,
So just for clarification, do you want to change that one, number 4, then? It's not really, I think
We should have it
we
there.
should have
but we
something
need more-
there, but is there more to it? Yeah, so it sounds like there's more to it. than
And
just
other, just
yeah,
from point of sale approach at the permit counter and other points of,
contact. I
contact.
mean, such as like putting out information on the Friday newsletter or something like that.
Yeah.
about-
Exactly.
or in an interaction with contractors or whatever that.
Postcard goes out to
Yeah.
property.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea. Number 5, a list of qualified contractors. The County of Marin Sustainability Department has convened numerous trainings for licensed contractors. Providing that list to the general public would inform applicants of who is specifically trained and vetted. Is that something we can do?
It sounds very easy, so. It's me, yeah. I don't know. BB, do you have anything to say on that one?
My just question was it a legal issue to
Yes.
be advertising
We'd
certain
be promoting-
contractors on the website?
No, we're
Promoting a
providing the
commercial
county list. All we're doing is providing the county list of people.
So it's on the county's website already?
We don't know that.
We don't know.
Or County Marine Sustainability Department is coming numerous.
You got
trainings
that, Leslie.
Yeah.
for list of general.
We could come back around on this one.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think if it was on the county's website, it wouldn't be an issue to link to that list on the county's website.
It wouldn't be.
I don't think the government could recommend.
No,
Yeah,
we're not
that's
recommending. it.
But I mean.
Yeah.
You can find out who's a licensed contractor.
Yeah, that's, yeah, exactly. I was thinking.
We can do
The
that.
switches, the switches.
Right.
Well, I would just say, I certainly appreciate the subcommittee's work on this and highlighting things that are really actionable and doable and things that can go on this list and helping staff sort of be able to accomplish what you're thinking would be helpful. So it's,
Great, thank you.
Thank you, policy subcommittee.
Sure.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun. And we got to meet at my house. That's cool too. So, do you want to, now that we've gone through your action plan, and we're running out of time, is now the time to take if we want to take an action on it?
Yes. So
So there's 3 choices. We could discuss those. One was to accept it as is. The second was to agree to accept the modifications that we came up with in this meeting.
Yeah.
Was that exactly what your recommendation was?
it just says in there, recommend that the town council accept the work plan with modifications.
Okay.
But you could be more specific than that. And say,
Modifications as we discussed in this meeting?
yeah,
yeah, and I think what we could do is that before this goes, council certainly could have either the policy subcommittee review it or Chair Johnson,
Sure. I'm either way.
just to make sure we got it right.
Yeah, I'll toll Leslie for that one. Okay, so would anybody like to make a motion regarding Well, is there any, does anybody want to make a motion to accept as is? All the answer is no. No. Okay. And then does anybody want to not accept and not make any modifications at all? Or
I was gonna make a motion to accept the work plan with modifications.
do I have a second?
Yes, second.
All those in favor say aye.
I,
There you got it. Are all your committees working this hard? Yeah.
All
Okay,
right.
okay.
I mean, you mean the committee's members themselves or the?
Yeah. I think we're working pretty well together. So that's
Yeah,
great.
absolutely.
Okay, what was the next item, Phoebe?
Next item D is consideration of restructuring subcommittees to align with the work plan. So that was if you wanted to make any changes to the subcommittee structure for a subcommittee to focus on any of the particular items.
Can you give us some, you've gone through this. Do you see things, can you make some recommendations or bring some thoughts forward about ways that we can optimize our subcommittees around the supporting the action plan better? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, so one of the things we started talking about at the last meeting was potentially bringing together the community engagement events and the communications subcommittee, because it seemed like there wasn't a quorum of participating members in both of the groups. So bringing them together might make them a little more effective and allow Martin and Amy to communicate more on that topic. So that would be supporting the outreach strategy. And then in terms of sort of all the other strategies right now fall under the policy subcommittee. So I think it's up to you whether you want to be the three of you want to be the sort of point group for staff to work with on those items, or whether maybe the other subcommittees are, unfortunately, we don't have everyone here tonight, but whether there's other committee members who would like to work on those specific items. So I think that's, up to you all. Maybe
And
we
we're
want to wait
burdened by
until
the,
we
we're
have.
burdened by the Brown Act. And so if there's other, so this is Amy, if you had a desire to be involved in the policy committee. And because we've got this rule, we can only have three, right?
Right.
Can we alternate members?
Yeah.
Like, you can get,
Or called a different subcommittee. I mean, there's no limit. on
We could have
the number
two
of
different
subcommittees.
subcommittees.
So you could have a subcommittee that was focused on the EV strategy and a subcommittee that was focused on the reach codes.
Yeah.
Something like that.
So do you have some thoughts on this? You just want more work, don't you? You just-
no, that is not why I brought it up. I think it makes a lot of sense to merge committees where where there are fewer members. So I think the first topic, like Martin, I'm in favor of that because I think we
That's
can just
fine.
move
Events and
faster.
communication.
And I think that would be that's how I would be evaluating this, is how do we move faster as a committee? Even though I think we're doing a lot, so it's not to say that, but between meetings, what structure would allow us to move the ball forward on any of these work plan items in a more efficient way than we're set up today? That would be the question. And so if the subcommittee, if there was a subcommittee for the reach codes and then a subcommittee for EV charging, let's just say we had three subcommittees that went against the three work plan items. You could have the three, you could technically sit on it, tell me if I'm right, on the EV charging and the reach codes, right?
Yeah.
Right, so you could cross-pollinate.
Right. Well, you can't cross-pollinate in that sense.
Good draw that.
The same person can be on both
Two
committees. As long as you're not going from one committee and then telling everyone in the other committee what you've discussed. in the
Right,
other
let me
committee.
rephrase that. The cross-pollination was like how quickly, like things they're doing as a subcommittee, not related to that policy, but just as a function of the group, right? So So I think we should look at that. Do I think we'll answer it tonight? No, I think we should all think about it. If we were to realign subcommittees to the top 3 in the work plan or something like that.
But now that we have a work plan, but we have a recommendation that is going to be accepted or not by council, then we can, in our next meeting, hopefully, we can agendize the discussion about breaking that down.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because I think you could also align different portions of the work plan. So the burnout and the
Yeah.
communications at the desk at town could align to reach codes, you know, so I think we address it next meeting and think about how we align it.
Does
Yeah.
that make sense?
Yeah, definitely. And the other thing to consider there is that staff will not be working on all these items at the same time. So there's maybe
Oh,
not
yeah.
a need for there to be a subcommittee focused on each item all at
Right.
the same time.
We could synchronize
Great point.
subcommittee activities with what staff is focusing on at that time.
Yeah.
So we aren't
That'd be
talking about something that you don't have the bandwidth to work on anyway.
But can we vote on, do we need to vote on combining our subcommittees, communications and engagement?
If you'd like to do that at this meeting, or we can hold off the
Do you
whole
wanna-
discussion until
Do you
the
want to
next
make a
time.
motion?
Can I make a motion as a subcommittee person?
Yes.
Okay,
So
Yeah.
as long as you're open to it. I motion that we merge our subcommittees, engagement and communications.
Do I have a second?
I seconded.
All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Done.
That's fine.
So we'll come back to D next week after there's an edit to the work plan.
Great. And just to clarify, I'm going to work with the policy subcommittee to confirm those changes.
Great.
Additions to the work plan.
Leslie, it will be waiting for your call. No, I'm just kidding. Yes, please. We would love to work with you on it. Leslie, you're listening, aren't you? Yeah, discussion of how to help yeah, let's just move item F to the next meeting. And then E.
Is that?
This is, maybe we can, I think we might be able to do E really quickly. It was an informational item, right?
Yeah, the staff updates.
Kids looking for dinner. So what's going on?
No, I'm
Okay.
just probably, but no,
Yeah.
that's not why.
So I've gone through most of them already. We talked about the reusable foodware ordinance. Wanted to give an update on the greenhouse gas inventory that's going on. That I did confirm that that is for 2021 community
I'm the
greenhouse gas
liaison.
emissions.
I could,
Oh, sorry.
you
No, you're right.
want me to
ahead.
take that real quick? I'll just make this really brief. So the council had a discussion on defining the roles of council liaisons and really primarily to define where that they are not to be involved in they're looking to you and you've been appointed to advise them. So it's not for an individual council liaison to sort of get involved with helping craft agendas or commenting at a public meeting or sort of advising, because it can confuse the committee in terms of an individual council member talking to you versus the entire council. So we define that role a little bit more clearly. They are there as a resource, just more, I think, from a process standpoint, and also a council liaison will be is assigned to sort of be informed about obviously issues and discussions and things that ultimately will end up at the council, and they can make reports to the town council about things they heard or listened to or the activities of the committee. And so Eli Beckman was appointed to be the liaison to the Climate Action Committee. So just be aware of that. And I'll just leave it there. So that's about it.
Can we move on to 5? And move other topics to next month? Updates and reports?
Yes, sorry, I was getting ahead of myself. So the 2021 greenhouse gas inventory for community emissions. It is going to be for 2021, not for 2022, and the scoping is staying the same as last year's inventory. So look in the appendix there, it tells you everything that's going to be included. That's an update on that. And we talked about the countywide electrification plan. Some good news that Martin was mentioning earlier is that the Bay Area Air Quality Management District this afternoon adopted rule changes to rules 9.4 and 9.6, which will limit the nitrous oxide emissions from water heaters and furnaces, with regulations essentially limiting those emissions to 0 by 2027 and 2029. So that's really exciting news. And I wanted to check in with,
It's so cool.
Mhm.
It is.
Yeah, and it was a really great meeting with lots of public commenters.
Why out so far? They should have backed that up. Okay.
Yeah, it was interesting. They talked about how they're going to be implementing it. So there's an implementation working group that's going to be working through a lot of the issues with appliance replacements and making sure that it can be implemented equitably and that there's support for communities making that change. So that's why the long timeline. They're going to be working through those issues, doing outreach and developing programs to support that transition.
Yep.
And then I wanted to check in with you all about your access to town emails, because we recently switched to Office 365, and there's been some challenges with that. So I wanted to make sure that you all have access to your town emails.
I do. Only
Great.
because I got a refresh and I'm a Outlook friendly guy anyway, so.
Yeah, so if you,
I failed to, I'm not getting emails. I went through the whole process as specified
okay,
and failed to connect.
didn't work for you. Okay, so I will,
I've gotten, seem to be getting all the information I need for these meetings on my personal email. But
Yeah, but they want you to try to use the town mail, because then you're,
yeah,
because if I think part of the reason is if Joe Public wanted to send you an email
yeah,
at your town address, they can. I've never received a single Joe Public email, but
I have.
But it's on the
Yeah.
website.
It's also for public records requests as well, as a public body. If somebody could say, I want all the records for, and that way you're not going into your personal email account.
just
Right.
there's a reason right there.
Oh, Phoebe, I don't have access to mine, but I'm playing phone tag with Marin IT to get it set up.
okay,
I contacted Marin IT and I will do it again.
okay.
See if I can do a redo.
So you have the contact information for
Yes.
them. Okay,
They helped me a lot.
I thought I was good, but then
Didn't work.
didn't work. Well, I wasn't getting emails. The
okay,
last one was from Mike, Oriarity.
yeah, so ideally town staff are sending out information on that. When I send out the packet, I send it out to your personal emails as well, just in case, but technically we should be transitioning towards using primarily the town emails. So I'll follow up on that and make sure
I'll
that
redo it.
that someone's working on that.
Mm.
And one of the items that was sent out recently to your town emails was about the end of the COVID emergency declaration, which gets us back into pre-pandemic Brown Act rules for attending meetings. So I also sent it out with the agenda packet for this last meeting, and there's a memo from our town attorney explaining all the rules there. The remote attendance is very limited under the current rules. So if you know you're gonna need to attend remotely, you need to let town staff know 5 days in advance of the meeting, and we have to publish your location on the agenda, and it has to be accessible to the public. Or that's the one option. Or if there's an emergency, if you have a contagious illness, and there's a list of those specific cases in that memo, then you can attend remotely and the entire body has to approve your request to attend remotely at the beginning of the meeting. And those are basically the only two cases. So there's unfortunately no longer any option to attend remotely if you just can't make it in person. You have to be here in person. So want to make sure that that's clear, and let me know if you have any questions about that.
Nope.
Can I ask you a question about number one, which is when is that revise of the town's PHG? When will that be done?
Oh, I do not know
Okay.
when it'll be done. I assume this year, but
Should we go on to 5B? Quickly? Any committee member updates, reports? Seeing none. Any 5C, any ad hoc subcommittee reports? I think we did the policy committee. Is there anything from?
For the engagement subcommittee, we were at the farmer's market last week. Thanks, Phil was there too and got to experience that. Martin was there too, and Phoebe was there. So we had, so it was great. Plus our volunteer. We had about 20 people, 25 people come to the table and talk to us, which is great. A little less than last time, but it was a windy, cold day. Maybe that had something to do with it. Phil brought up some good points about maybe how we message. It at times may feel like we're selling something. So, and that could be me jumping out at people. I don't know. So maybe tailoring some of the signage so it's very clear that we're a committee of the town. So that went well. We'll do another one in April. I think Leslie will volunteer from the committee, but of course, if you want to join, please do. And I'll reach out to Leslie on that. A quick update from Meredith. She did connect with Redwood students, and so I think they'll be helping us in
Yay.
April, which is
Excellent.
cool. And she is working with a student at Redwood to potentially interview someone at MCE. So early stages there of how we might use that, what that looks like. So more to come from Meredith on that. And then for something for the next agenda is we do need to start talking about the 4th of July to get ahead of that, what we might want to do as a committee.
Any thoughts on it on the 4th of July?
Well,
Since you thought about it a little bit, I think.
we can table and we can also apply to be part of the parade. And I know in the past we've had ambitious ideas about what that looks like in the parade. So if we want to do something that involved dealers and or different models of EVs, we need to get ahead of that because there are other 4th of July parades and those folks could be committed to other opportunities. So those are a couple ideas.
When do you think we need to have that as an action item for us?
I think we should put it on next agenda to talk about and then start percolating some ideas and then finalize maybe in May what we want it to look like so that we can start confirming if it's students or if it's cars and locking people in.
Yeah.
Because what happens is people leave in June and then we're done.
I brought an induction range into my office. That was part of the PG&E a loaner program. It was so cool for people to see an induction range or tabletop thing.
Yeah, so maybe we could have that at our table or something.
Yeah,
Yeah, it'd be very cool.
yeah, because people hear about it, but they don't. Yeah.
Bring that idea and many
Okay,
more to
yeah.
next
Okay,
week.
okay, yes. So that's, I think that's it for 5C. Any future agenda items besides that one you just identified?
It's just the other one I brought up.
I don't have anything from my end, but I noted those two.
Adam, will the staff be ready to start talking about their outreach program in our next meeting?
Which specific?
Or the reach code outreach? Is that something that you're going to bring to us for our thoughts, ideas, or is?
I can certainly bring an update on where we are in the reach code process at the next meeting.
Okay. We just want to be supportive. That's all. Any other agenda items people want to put out there? No. Okay. Should we adjourn? Okay,
Good idea.
I will adjourn this meeting.